What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and today I want to talk about the elusive fourth stimulus check. In this video, I want to break down in what context we could possibly see a stimulus check, who would potentially receive it, and ultimately what the chances I think of the stimulus check becoming a reality actually are. So if you're interested in learning if you're somebody who could potentially get the stimulus check if it becomes a reality, make sure to watch until the end of the video. So let's get started. So at this point in time, we are in April of 2021. We have surpassed the 1-year anniversary of the CARES Act, which means stimulus checks have officially been being distributed for 1 whole year, which is quite honestly crazy to think about. I feel like it was just a couple of months ago that the CARES Act became a reality, and to think that we are now 3 stimulus checks deep into the pandemic is absolutely insane. But the good news is that we are officially getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. Businesses are starting to open back up, travel restrictions are being lifted, the vaccine is becoming easier and easier to get. In fact, in my home state of Texas, healthy, younger individuals finally became eligible for the vaccine. In fact, I just received mine this past week, or at least the first dose, and it looks as though stimulus checks are almost going to be a thing of the past. Now, when it comes to the pandemic, though, there is a lot of arguments that economists and politicians have made that the effects of the pandemic don't end once the pandemic is deemed over. That the effects of the pandemic will last potentially 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 years after COVID is a thing of the past. Because of the fact that businesses, industries, and people were so drastically affected by the pandemic, there is an argument that people are making that we need stimulus even after the pandemic is over. That there is a need for stimulus checks even after things return to normal. Now that's where the fourth stimulus check comes in, and that's where the American Family Plan comes in as well. So as you guys know, President Joe Biden released part 1 of a 2-part spending bill. This is a spending bill, not a stimulus package. And I know that the difference in that may seem a bit small, but it's actually quite significant. With this first part that he released this past week, it is a bill focused on infrastructure, on roads, bridges, waterways, trade, clean energy, and more. This is something that President Joe Biden released this past week, and it is something that I will be doing a video on in the coming days, really breaking it down in a deep dive way. But part 2 of this package, which has yet to be released, is the family plan, the American Family Plan, which is dubbed to be a social infrastructure plan. With this plan, there is expected to be $2 trillion allocated to social infrastructure, so things like paid family leave, universal pre-K, free community college, and more. And there are a number of lawmakers that are proposing to put reoccurring stimulus checks inside of this bill. Now, as of right now, the discussion of reoccurring stimulus checks is so incredibly new that this is something that has just been floated around. It hasn't been something that has been seriously discussed, and it isn't something that we know really any details about. We don't know what this would look like. We don't know who would receive it. We don't know what the duration of this would be. The details are completely unknown at this point. But there is one serious question that has to be asked. What is the chances of us getting this type of stimulus check, a reoccurring stimulus check within this American Family Plan bill? And that's really what I would like to talk about today. But in order to really understand the chances of getting a reoccurring stimulus check passed, we have to first talk about how this bill is being structured and why it's being structured the way that it is. As I mentioned, this bill is 2 different parts, a traditional infrastructure paired with a social infrastructure. And I mentioned in a video a couple of days ago that the reason why this bill is being clumped into 2 parts, and the reason why 2 very different issues, traditional infrastructure with social issues, are being combined into one is because it is a negotiating play from the Democrats. You see, traditional infrastructure is a cause that Republican lawmakers traditionally support with pretty big enthusiasm. Republicans are really eager to rebuild roads, to rebuild infrastructure, to increase trade, to increase the efficiency of capitalism in America. And as a result, an infrastructure bill like it is being outlined in this $2 trillion American jobs plan is something that would most likely get bipartisan support, definitely enough to be able to pass as a whole. But the problem is that whenever it comes to social issues and what is deemed as the social infrastructure piece of this puzzle, the American Family Plan, there are pieces of that bill that are much less likely to be supported by Republicans. You see, if Democratic lawmakers were to come forward with a very socially focused bill like the American Family Plan, that bill would not get barely any bipartisan support. The only way a bill like that would be able to be passed is through a process like the budget reconciliation process that we saw being used with the American Rescue Plan, the most recent $1.9 trillion package that was recently passed. This is because issues like free community college, like paid family leave, like universal pre-K, like the possibility of reoccurring stimulus checks are issues that are not supported by Republican lawmakers. So the way that the Democrats have structured this plan is to be able to pass social issues while using traditional infrastructure as the bargaining chip. So whenever they come forward and they say, we'd like to do universal pre-K, Republicans will inevitably push back, so Democrats can negotiate off of this infrastructure bill that will gain a lot of Republican support as a way to get some of these social issues in the social infrastructure bill passed. But the problem is, I don't know if the traditional infrastructure bill, the American Jobs Plan, is going to be enough to get the American Family Plan passed, at least not in its current form. Now, granted, we don't know exactly what the American Family Plan looks like. It is expected to be announced in the coming weeks. But I am willing to bet, and I would bet a lot of money on this, that whatever is announced in the coming weeks by President Joe Biden will look very, very different than whatever ends up being passed in the long run. Because while Democrats are going to use the traditional infrastructure bill as a bargaining chip, the Republicans are going to use the social infrastructure bill as a bargaining chip as well. And because of that, both of these bills, both the American Jobs Plan as well as the American Family Plan, are going to look vastly different at the end of the day whenever they become law compared to what they look like today in the kind of draft version of the bills. So to answer the question of what are the chances of us seeing a fourth stimulus check or a reoccurring stimulus check, and to be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. I think that if we see a reoccurring stimulus check, I think that it's going to play out one of two ways. Number one is it's going to be negotiated on the backbone of the traditional infrastructure bill, the American Jobs Plan. It's going to be negotiated down, and it's going to be something that is super targeted only to the people that really need it. It's going to be for a short period of time between 3, 6, maybe 9 months, maybe until the end of 2021, and it's going to be a smaller monthly amount. Maybe $300, maybe $600, but I don't see it being any more than that. I also see it being highly, highly targeted to low-income communities, minority groups, as well as low earners, so people living at or below the poverty line. I do not see this being something that we've seen with the last 3 stimulus checks where anybody making under $75,000 would qualify. I think that that is highly, highly unlikely. Now, this is the way that I see this playing out if this gets passed through a traditional legislation process. On the flip side, a very real possibility that could be pursued is passing this through the process of budget reconciliation. Lawmakers have already set the standard that stimulus checks do qualify under the budget reconciliation rules. And as you guys know, the process of budget reconciliation is a process that lawmakers have recently used to pass bills without the typical threshold that is needed to pass a bill. And you simply need majority vote rather than bipartisan support. If the American Family Plan ends up being passed through the process of budget reconciliation, then I do think that we could see this going out. I do think the amount could be larger, and I do think the amount of people that would receive it would be more overarching as well. Now, I am, of course, not a lawyer, not a politician, not a news anchor, not a journalist. I am just simply a YouTuber that spends way too much time reading about legislation. But this is, in my opinion, the way that I think that this will end up playing out. One of these two ways. I think that it will get passed either by a traditional legislation process, but it will look vastly different than whatever is proposed in the coming weeks by President Joe Biden. Or I think it will look more similar to what's originally proposed, but if this is the case, it will have to be passed through the process of budget reconciliation. In my opinion, I think that the chances of getting any substantial reoccurring stimulus check to a wide group of people is extremely, extremely slim, simply because it will not get bipartisan support. Now, when it comes to timeframes and when you could potentially expect to receive a reoccurring stimulus check, I would not hold your breath. It's going to be a very, very long time before these two bills are passed. There's going to be a ton of negotiation. There's going to be a ton of back and forth. We're still waiting to get the announcement about the second package. There's just a lot that needs to be done. And because of this, I would not expect for this to be passed by July, August, maybe September. Government has proved time and time again over the last year that they work very slowly, and this infrastructure spending bill is a big one, and there's going to be a lot of pushback. But remember that in the meantime, there are a ton of benefits that are coming to the table. The child tax credit, which is being implemented in July, is the most notable one, and that is a substantial one for people that have kids and families. in summary, to answer the question once again, will we get a fourth reoccurring stimulus check? Possibly. Will as many people get it as the last 3 stimulus checks? Highly doubtful. When will we get that stimulus check? Probably at some point in the late Q3, early Q4 of 2021. That is my prediction. Ultimately, none of us really know the exact details, and this is really just speculation. But I do think that it is important to set the precedent that this is going to take a very long time to pass. And once it does pass, there is absolutely no guarantee. I would argue not even a high likelihood that a fourth stimulus check will occur. And I've been seeing more and more on YouTube creators talking about how a fourth stimulus check is guaranteed, how it's just a matter of time until we'll get one. And that simply is not the case. There is a chance that we'll get one, but it is not a high likelihood. And even if we do get one, it will be way more targeted than the previous 3. So my word of advice to all of you guys watching the channel is don't rely on the stimulus check. If you get one, it is a bonus, but you should by no means be counting on it because that is setting yourself up for failure. Like always, you guys, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, comments, or if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.